The Roberts Court has turned back the clock on our democracy by over a century. This disastrous decision paves the way for free and unlimited special interest spending in our elections. With a stroke of a pen, the court decided to overrule the 100-year-old ban on corporate expenditures.
I don't know why the opponents are so freaked out about this. They don't seem to be bothered by the fact that media corporations have free speech. Why shouldn't a non-media corporation have free speech as well?
A big ruling today by the U.S. Supreme Court justices voting 5-4 to essentially give corporations and unions, for that matter, the same First Amendment rights that individuals have when it comes to political arena, the funding of political ads, speaking out. Justice Anthony Kennedy writing this: when government seeks to use its full power, including the criminal law, to command where a person may get his or her information or what distrusted source he or she may not hear, it uses censorship to control thought. This is unlawful. The First Amendment confirms the freedom to think for ourselves. We're back with the panel. Charles, what does this mean practically?
I think it's going to be extremely important. I think it's a great ruling. The most important amendment is the First Amendment. The most important of our rights is free speech, and the most important element in free speech is political speech. And that's why the governing class has always attempted kind of regulation of political speech. The less, the better. Now, it has to be admitted that one of the downsides of this will be a marginal increase in the power of money. However, for all of the restrictions that we have had under all our laws, the finance laws, money always ends up having its influence one way or the other. It finds its level, it goes around loopholes, you hire smart and now rich lawyers, and you get around it. And secondly, the only way to completely abolish the power of money is to do as is done in other English-speaking countries and have it, you ban all political money and you have it all paid by the government. The problem is, if you do that, it's a huge advantage for any incumbent. So I think what we heard today is exactly what you ought to do. Disclaimers and disclosures so everybody knows who's giving and who is financing, but open the gates.
Chuck Schumer, a senator from New York, said it's probably one of the 3 or 4 decisions in the history of the Supreme Court that most undermines democracy. That was his take.
Well, I can say this. On a practical level, for 2010 and 2012, it will help Republicans. Corporations generally support Republicans, and in the battle of political money, they have more money than the unions.
What about unions?
They have more money net than the unions. They just do. The unions will be in there, and believe me, this ruling obviously affects them and opens the door for them too, but dollar for dollar, corporations are going to beat the resources and the assets of the labor unions. They just are. So this is a win for Republicans, and it's yet another kind of blow to the solar plexus this week for Democrats.
You know, I don't really think so. Look, I don't think we're going to see all kinds of corporate expenditures in raising, you know, the independent expenditures that show, you know, we're for this candidate and not for that candidate. You know, those big companies have shareholders. Do they want their companies doing that? Do they want them spending money on that? And the other thing is, look, in 28 states with about 60% of the population, the states allow corporations to participate with expenditures in campaign races, in elections. They do it. Now, has that distorted the process? Has that been a huge asset to Republicans in these states? States like Oregon, for one, a very Democratic state. In Virginia, which now sort of goes back and forth between Republicans and Democrats, the history just isn't there. And look, as Charles said, there's so much money out there. We already have rich people. A lot of them are liberals, you know, George Soros and so on, and a lot of them are conservatives, pouring money in all these independent expenditures. And, you know, I'm very doubtful that corporations are going to be jumping in there so much.
And Mark, quickly, this does not overturn the McCain-Feingold legislation entirely.
Right.
And although Senator Feingold says he wants to go back and get more legislation to go back at this, that's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen. There's still disclosure, and corporations are still banned from giving individual candidates money. So you can't have, like, the senator from Boeing, the way we used to have in the old days. Some people thought that was good because at least you knew where they were coming from. But yeah, but so pieces of this campaign finance system are still intact, and no, I don't think there'll be any legislation overturning this ruling.
That is it for the panel, but stay tuned because they're back. We'll explain next.